What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and another Outriders video. Now, a question that's come up a couple of times on the streams and in the comments of the videos are what we should be doing right now while there's still 2 months until the expansion comes out. Is there any reason to play the game, or what am I doing at this moment in time? Now, specifically for the case of this video, I'm not going to use myself so much as an example, but I'm going to think about it in the way of whether it is a new player coming to the game, brand new, and has seen the trailer for Worldslayer now and thought, you know what, maybe now's the time for me to try out Outriders. There was a little bit of bad news that I heard about the game at some point, but since it's getting a DLC now, maybe it's like, you know, the real deal. Maybe they've done some things. I've heard some good stuff about it. My buddies are playing it, whatever. Or as someone that played it at the start and then kind of gave it a long break now, maybe didn't even check out New Horizon and is basically hyped for the game now that Worldslayer is coming out. So first and foremost, I think it's important that you should be getting to level 30. The expansion itself will be taking part after the main story of the game, so I don't know if it's possible for you to take any character that is just level 20 or level 25 or something like that and hasn't completed the story yet. I'm relatively certain that you have to actually reach that end of story milestone first before you're actually able to dive into the Worldslayer expansion. Now, one other thing that's worth noting is with the DLC itself, there's basically one free upgrade available to players that are starting out the game and have an open character slot. So when you create the brand new character, and this is actually something that they showed in the reveal, when you create a brand new character, then they will actually allow you to choose the starting point of this character. So you could specify and say, I want this character to be ready to start with Worldslayer, which means you'll get a level 30 of the class of your choice and you'll be able to dive right into it. But that's one of those only. So that's certainly something that you could hold out for if you aren't interested in leveling up your characters at all right now. However, if you have been playing the game for a while, all 6 your character slots are full or whatever the reason, then absolutely your priority should be getting to max level so that those characters are ready to jump into Worldslayer's story component and finish that and then get to the new end game, or the true end game as they're calling it. Now, speaking of this, that brings us to our next point, and that is of course one of the very important currencies in the game is of course drop pod resources. And at the moment right now, that's one of the main ways in which we can upgrade our gear. And also, well, it's actually the only way that we can upgrade our gear, but it's also one of the ways that we can get legendaries that we need. So I absolutely think that it's probably in your best interest to try and get as much drop pod resources going into the expansion as you can. Now, we don't know if the drop pod resources are going to have other uses for them. As I've said, at the moment right now, they're primarily used as a currency to level and to buy legendaries. But even if it only stays that, the point is you are going to have a whole bunch of levels from equipment level 50 to level 75, which is the new cap when Worldslayer comes out, that you'll have to level up. And we don't know what the prices of those are going to be. Of course, it is ridiculously expensive to level up gear to level 50, so I can only imagine if it continues along that trend what it would actually cost to level to 75, or it could be a brand new currency. But what could also likely happen is there could be vendors in Worldslayer that actually sell some of the new legendaries that are coming with Worldslayer for drop pod resources. And if you have a whole bunch of these going into the expansion, you're going to be ready to buy those straight off the rip. It could also be that Tiago himself not only just sells old legendaries, old Outriders legendaries anymore, but now also maybe offers some stock from Worldslayer as well. So in both those cases, if drop pod resources are the main currency that you're going to be using for that, it's obviously a good idea to stockpile as much of this as you can. Now, we know that currencies are stored character specific, so they're not shared between all the classes or all the characters in your roster. So obviously, as soon as you filled up one of your characters, start filling up the other one, and that way you actually have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 full banks worth of drop pod resources that you can do. Now, that takes us to the other currencies as well. So of course, we also have titanium and leather and some other currencies in the game as well. These are a little bit more difficult to essentially, you know, farm up. They actually increase over time as you simply just dismantle gear and get these items. Of course, you can get some of them by killing specific enemies, and they do drop out in the wild, but the main way how you actually get these currencies is usually from dismantling gear that you don't want. So this will organically fill up as you are doing these expeditions and you're getting more drop pod resources. You'll just be actually getting those as well. And a good idea is also to keep them, because those are also used, of course, for some upgrading in gear. And if they keep the way how gear is upgraded the same as it is currently in Outriders, then those resources will be almost as important as drop pod resources are. Then stash space is a funny one, and I made a previous video about this a couple of days ago, specifically discussing how sad I was that we weren't getting an increased stash space. But what I'm doing with my stash space right now is I am keeping some of my guard rolls to see, at the very least for me, because this is the kind of content I create, to see if I upgrade those guard rolls from level 50 to level 75, if there's a way for me to introduce a third mod. Maybe that's something they haven't showed us yet. So we know now that the new Apocalypse gear can have 3 mods per item or per gear piece. So if there's a way for me to use some kind of other mat or something like that to actually upgrade these weapons that I have now that I consider guard rolls to have a third slot, I highly doubt it. But of course I have to keep track of this and just see if that is actually the case. But also, a guard roll at 50 is still a guard roll at 75 damage wise. So some of my weapons I am holding back on, but basically any kind of gear that I have that only has 2 pieces on or 2 mods on them, and gear that I was essentially saving because I might wanted to build builds from them, and I might wanted to, you know, like tweak out the mods on them, everything like that, I'm getting rid of this now, because the bottom line is, as we start farming into the end game and we start seeing, again, we don't know how often Apocalypse gear will drop and how difficult it would be to actually obtain this. I assume it would be slightly more difficult than it is to get legendaries right now. But the bottom line is, we will, especially me, I know I'll be playing the game a lot, I'll be farming the game a lot, so I imagine that over time I'll actually start building up quite a nice group of this Apocalypse gear, and so therefore this will obviously make the rest of my gear that I'm currently storing in my stash redundant. So I do want to clean out my stash a little bit. I advise you guys to do the same thing. Of course, once the expansion drops, we're going to be getting brand new pieces of gear. There's 100 new items, 70 of them, you know, armor, and 30 of them weapon, which are coming with the expansion. So a whole shitload of new gear. So we want to have as much space as possible available to us in our stashes and on our characters, so that we can actually accommodate this without having to sit there for like 3 or 4 hours agonizing over what to delete and what to throw away. So we have 2 months to look at this now. So there's absolutely no reason to do that. Then for me, it was important to have one of each class. Again, I'm the kind of person that not only tests everything in the game, but likes to have builds for everything in the game. And also, if something is a little bit busted and it's really good and it's really OP, then I'd like to have my own copy of that as well. So something else that you might want to consider, if you've only ever, you know, played Technomancer, only ever played Trickster, only ever played Pyro, didn't build any alts or anything like that, is get yourself one of each of the other. That's going to be 4 of your 6 slots filled, and you'll be ready to play whichever class you enjoy most once the expansion comes out. The archetypes are going to change up a little bit. It is super interesting to see what they've done with some of the builds, especially when it comes to PAX points. So we're going to be seeing interesting things like, for instance, you know, Technomancers actually being able to be healers and buffers of the group, which is really interesting. I think it's a fantastic idea, and it's amazing for build variety. So absolutely, I would advise you to, if you've got the time, you've got 2 months, you don't have anything to play, to get your characters up to level 30, get yourself one of each of the classes. And then last but not least, also, and this is probably the one that's harder, some people usually kind of lose motivation around CT9, CT10, CT11, because it starts getting really difficult. So challenge tiers are of course being replaced by Apocalypse tiers or Apocalypse levels, but I would imagine that if you are at challenge tier level 15, it means that once you start the expansion, you are then Apocalypse level 15. I could be wrong. Maybe we start brand out at level 1 again. That could also be the case. But again, there's no harm in you being CT 15 capable, which means you'll have a competent build, you'll know how to play that build, and the build will deal a decent amount of damage, which will just give you that, you know, head start into the expansion, so that you can finish the story mode and you can get those PAX points and you can dive into the new Trials of Umfufu or whatever the hell it's called. I forget the name. It's ridiculously hard to remember. But that's basically it. Those are the things that I'm keeping myself busy with right now. Some of them I've obviously accomplished already, but whenever anybody asks me as a new player or as someone that's returning, what should they be concentrating on to get themselves ready for Worldslayer, then this is basically what I would tell them. Now, and you'll notice that I didn't say anything about making sure that your mod library is full and that you unlock all mods and everything like that. But again, doing these things that I've just mentioned in this list here will organically get you there. You'll be doing expeditions, you'll be getting tons of gear, you'll be dismantling that gear, which means you unlock the mods and you're good to go. Of course, failing that, if you really struggle with this and you don't want to do it across all 4 characters, or you don't want to farm with all 4 characters, of course you also always have the option of farming with your strongest character and then simply passing that gear to the other characters through the stash for them to dismantle, so that you get the mods on there as well, because we know that each character's mod library is of course uniquely stored to themselves. But that's it for the list. Let me know in the comments down below if there's anything else that you would like to tack onto this, that you would add onto this, that you would be doing. And that's basically it. Enjoy playing the game, have fun. We got 2 months to go. 2 months seems like a super long time, but it'll be here soon, I imagine. And I'm super excited for the things that they're still going to share with us on the way to the actual launch. But that's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. It's just super important to me that you have a fantastic morning, a great afternoon, and a super awesome evening wherever you are in the world. And until next video, fucking cheers.
They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the best of me.